Welcome back to our studios here in Lahore. I'm Hamza Amjad. Now, over 50 countries have called for an immediate lifting of the ongoing curfew and release of those arrested in Indian-occupied Kashmir. In a joint statement at the UN Human Rights Council in Geneva, they expressed deep concern over New Delhi's actions in the occupied valley. They condemned reports of widespread torture, extrajudicial killings, sexual abuse and enforced disappearances. The members also called for an immediate halt to the use of force, especially pellet guns, in the valley. The statement called for an immediate end to India's communications blackout in the occupied valley. Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi called this statement Pakistan's biggest success at the UN Human Rights Council. Qureshi said New Delhi's occupation of Kashmir contravenes the Geneva Convention. He said the UN Council should act on these joint demands. Indian occupying forces have martyred a youth in the Sopore town of occupied Kashmir. Asif was martyred while traveling in a car when Indian troops opened fire on the vehicle, killing him on spot. Earlier, Indian troops arrested at least 8 more young people during house raids in the same town. Occupied Kashmir has been under curfew with a communications blackout for 38 days. Meanwhile, Islamabad has called for strengthening the role of the UN military observers in India and Pakistan. Pakistan's ambassador to the UN, Dr. Maliha Lodhi, said the efficacy of observer groups have become more consequential after Indian ceasefire violations. Airstrikes have resumed in northwest Syria, where Russia brokered a ceasefire on August the 31st. War monitors say Russian airstrikes have killed 1 person in Idlib. This is the last major rebel stronghold in Syria after 8 years of war. War monitors say over 500 people have been killed by shelling in the area and airstrikes carried out by the government and its allies since late April. We're going to take a break, but don't go anywhere. More stories to follow. Welcome back. Now, Iran says it will retreat further from its commitments under the 2015 nuclear deal if necessary. In Tehran, President Hassan Rouhani said the US should end its policy of pressurizing Iran. Addressing his cabinet, Rouhani asked the US to abandon the policies of warmongers. He said Iran has never started a war or violated its commitments. Last week, Tehran took a third step away from the deal by reactivating its nuclear centrifuges. Iranian officials say Tehran is capable of increasing enrichment further than current levels. The Chief of Staff of the Iranian Armed Forces is visiting China to discuss bilateral defense cooperation. Major General Mohammad Bakri and his Chinese counterpart Li Zuocheng will discuss regional developments. During his stay, Bakri will hold meetings with high-ranking Chinese military officials. The Iranian commander will also discuss the establishment of a joint Iran-China military commission. Heading a high-profile military delegation, he will also visit Chinese industrial centers. Iran and China signed an agreement in 2016 to enhance defense cooperation between the two countries. Iran says the oil cargo of a tanker released by Gibraltar has been sold at sea to a private company. Britain accuses Iran of selling oil to Syria from the Adrian Darya 1, which it seized at Gibraltar in July. In a tweet, Iran's envoy to London, Hamid Bahdinejad, said Tehran hasn't violated any obligations. In a meeting with the British Foreign Secretary, Bahdinejad said Britain's actions against the tanker violated international law. He says European sanctions cannot be extended to third countries. The ambassador says the owner of the oil will decide its destination. Saudi Arabia has called an emergency meeting of the OIC's foreign ministers to discuss Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's latest threat to annex major parts of Palestine. The kingdom has asked international bodies to reject Netanyahu's latest idea for the occupied West Bank. The Saudi royal court said in a statement that the Israeli move is against the UN Charter and international law. The kingdom called the annexation bid groundless and legally invalid. Earlier, the Arab League condemned Tel Aviv's move. In a statement, the bloc's foreign ministers called it an act of aggression, undermining any chances of a peace settlement. Palestine's President Mahmoud Abbas says his country will end all agreements with Israel if any such plan goes ahead. Iran's Foreign Minister Javad Zarif has also condemned Netanyahu's statement. The US has imposed new sanctions on a range of groups, including Hamas, ISIS, and Iran's Revolutionary Guards. The US Treasury Department says the sanctions were applied under an executive order recently updated by President Donald Trump. President Trump says the order will enhance the US's ability to sanction terrorists and their supporters. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin says the US government has refocused its counterterrorism efforts to adapt to emerging threats. US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo says President Trump can meet Iran's President Hassan Rouhani at the UN without preconditions. Russia has confirmed an alleged US spy infiltrated the Kremlin's ranks and worked in Moscow's presidential administration. But Moscow rejected US media reports claiming that the CIA spy had access to President Vladimir Putin. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov says the person was a low-level official who was fired several years ago. He also dismissed claims that the spy was extracted in 2017 over safety concerns. US media has claimed the spy's proximity to Putin made him one of the CIA's most valuable Russian assets. Venezuelan Armed Forces carry out drills along the Colombian border amid rising tensions between the two countries. Operational Commander Remigio Ceballos says the military is preparing to intercept any foreign invasion. Tensions began rising after the US suggested it would support Colombian border forces earlier this year. President Nicolas Maduro ordered the army to deploy along the 2,200-kilometer border. 150,000 troops were mobilized to carry out security exercises over several weeks. Tanks and missile carriers were also deployed around the La Fria airport in western Táchira. Maduro said he was placing his forces on high alert, expecting a military conflict with Colombia. Colombia's right-wing president, Ivan Duque, has accused Maduro of sheltering FARC dissidents on his territory. Canada has decided to beef up its military presence in the Arctic. This follows Russia's recent boost to troop numbers in the area. In a policy document, Ottawa unveiled a 10-year strategic plan for the resource-rich Arctic region. The Arctic has petroleum deposits and wood, and is a major maritime shortcut between Europe and Asia. Now, a new post created by incoming European Commission Chief Ursula von der Leyen has drawn widespread condemnation. She has rebranded the former Migration, Home Affairs and Citizenship portfolio into the Office for Protecting Our European Way of Life. The European Commission has been accused of adopting far-right rhetoric after the post was announced. The new title also garnered criticism from within Brussels for its perceived fascist-sounding name. MEPs criticized the post for sending a worrying message by linking migration with security. Von der Leyen defended the job title, saying it has been part of her political guidelines since July. She has assigned the controversially named office to Greece's Margaritis Schinas. Germany says it will do its part to avoid a proxy war in Libya. Chancellor Angela Merkel has warned the situation in Libya could destabilize all of Africa. In a wide-ranging speech to the lower house of parliament, Merkel compared the situation in Libya to Syria, promising to contain the brewing conflict. She also said European signatories will continue efforts to salvage the nuclear deal with Iran. She expressed hope for an orderly Brexit, saying Berlin is also prepared for a no deal. She also called out the US-China trade dispute for disrupting Berlin's exports. Amid the weakening economy, she conceded tax revenues could come in lower than expected. South Sudanese President Salva Kiir and rebel leader Riek Machar have agreed to form a transitional government by November the 12th. Information Minister Michael Makui says the parties met at the State House on Monday evening to discuss details of the agreement. Over in Sudan, the ruling Sovereign Council announced it is closer to reaching a comprehensive peace deal with the South Sudanese armed groups. In a statement, the council said the two parties at the talks in Juba have agreed on most of the outstanding issues. Over in Thailand, ASEAN economic ministers from China, Japan and South Korea say they will boost regional multilateral trade. They say they will uphold the international trading system and reduce the impact of the global economic slowdown and recent trade war. At the meeting in Bangkok, they also promised closer regional economic integration. They expressed concern over the impact of increased trade tensions on the global economy. Thailand's Deputy Prime Minister Jurin Laksanawisit said the meeting is helping drive the regional economy forward. He said they have agreed to promote trade and investment amid uncertainty in the global economy. An exhibition titled Pursuing Happiness for the People, 70 Years of Human Rights Progress has opened in Geneva. It highlights China's achievements in promoting human rights over the last 7 decades. More in this report.
China has come a long way in pursuing a regimen that ensures happiness of its people. The progress made in the last 7 decades has been remarkable, and an exhibition in Geneva, Switzerland, titled Pursuing Happiness for the People, 70 Years of Human Rights Progress in New China, commemorates. It features over 120 pictures and 20 videos. Nearly 300 people, including diplomats, attended the opening ceremony.
We appreciate very much the achievements reached by China, by the Chinese government in the area of respecting human rights in all areas, in economic, cultural, social, and many others. I think that during these 70 years, China made a very step forward in promoting human rights.
Chinese officials said that they have always put people's interests above all else. Officials vowed to further promote human rights and make contributions to the international cause of human rights.
China will achieve a higher level of comprehensive development and make greater contribution to the development of global human rights and human civilization diversity.
China's progress has won high praise from many visitors and admirers all around the world.
With that, we're going to take another short break, but don't go anywhere. More stories to follow. Welcome back. In Nigeria, a banned organization claims police killed 13 of its members on a Shura. The group says 10 marchers were also injured in a crackdown on the religious procession. The Islamic Movement of Nigeria says its people were killed in states across the country's north, including Kaduna, Bauchi, and Gombe. The police dispute the group's account, saying it dispersed the marchers professionally. The IMN was banned in July after a series of deadly clashes with officials. The United States has pledged to offer a temporary refuge to hurricane victims from the Bahamas. Washington's statement comes after hundreds of Bahamians were refused entry to the U.S. because they did not have visas. U.S. Customs and Border Protection Commissioner Mark Morgan says the U.S. will offer temporary visa status to hurricane victims.
If your life is in jeopardy, you're in the Bahamas, and you want to get to the United States, you're going to be allowed to come to the United States, right? Whether you have travel documents or not.
Americans are commemorating the 18th anniversary of the 9/11 attacks in New York. Over 3,000 people were killed when hijacked airliners crashed into the World Trade Center, the Pentagon, and a field in Pennsylvania. Thousands of people will gather to remember the dead and the attack. Victims' relatives will gather at Ground Zero to pay homage and raise awareness about terrorism. U.S. President Donald Trump is scheduled to join today's ceremony at the Pentagon. In New York City, a service will be held at the 9/11 Memorial, and mourners will gather for the annual reading of victims' names. In memory of the event, people around the country will also volunteer at food banks, schools, and home building projects. In Pakistan, the death anniversary of the country's founder, Muhammad Ali Jinnah, is being observed today. People from all walks of life visited the mausoleum of Pakistan's founder on his 71st death anniversary. Various events are being organized to highlight his leadership and relentless struggle for the creation of Pakistan. In their messages, Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan and President Arif Alvi paid tribute to Muhammad Ali Jinnah, Qaid-e-Azam. While environmental-friendly car concepts have stolen the limelight at the Frankfurt Motor Show, car makers have been sharing their concepts for a better and greener future. Let's take a look.
Car makers from around the globe have met in the German city of Frankfurt to show off their latest ideas. These include a large number of plug-in hybrids and an array of fully electric concepts. The contributors insist on the need for infrastructure and the market sustainability of alternatively fueled vehicles. Auto giants say the future will be made by eco-friendly vehicles.
The future is electric, and the Audi e-tron is for us, and already for a lot of delighted customers, an electrifying beginning. By 2025, we will have launched 30 electric models, 20 of them fully electric.
BMW chief Oliver Zipse says his company aims to follow global agreements made on climate change.
What concerns the next generation most is climate change. Therefore, it also concerns us at the BMW Group. That's why we are clearly committed to the Paris Agreement and the United Nations Global Compact already since 2001.
Manufacturers are struggling to deal with consumers' demands for high-power engines while exploring alternative fuel vehicles.
First up in business, against the run of play in the escalating trade war, China has exempted 16 US products from additional tariffs. The Chinese Finance Ministry says the exemption of US products from tariffs will take effect from September the 17th and will be valid for 1 year. It says the government wants to ease the negative impact of the trade war and benefit companies in both countries. Pharmaceuticals and lubricants are among the exclusions to import levies. Trade negotiators from both countries are scheduled to meet in Washington early next month. Apple has revealed its latest iPhone 11, which comes with new cameras, an improved screen, a faster processor, and longer battery life. The new smartphone series carries on where the iPhone X series left off last year. Apple said it paired the new phone's 3 cameras for color and exposure, pushing the iPhone as a filmmaking system. iPhone sales have declined for the past 2 fiscal quarters. European stock markets have opened higher as investors watch out for a key central bank meeting. The European Central Bank will meet on Thursday to decide its latest monetary policy. After the opening bell, the Pan-European Stoxx 600 rose 0.3%. All oil and gas indices have slipped 0.2%. Frankfurt's DAX 30 index climbed 0.6%, while the Paris CAC 40 gained 0.3%. Austrian plant engineering company Andritz's shares also jumped 5.1%. Gold prices have also edged higher. Well, it's 37 degrees here in Lahore, but let's take a look at the weather around the world. And that was all I have from the news bulletin at the moment. Do stay tuned to Indus News for further updates. And as always, thanks for watching.